Hey everybody, we're here to go ahead and replace the charge port ribbon cable here on this iPhone 5C. So you can see it's got the 3.5mm headphone jack, the microphone, and the charge port on it. So it's replacing all three. We're going to need a couple of tools to open this phone up. Probably the most unique is the pentalobe screwdriver that I have here, and I apparently just powered the phone on. We'll also need a small Phillips screwdriver. This nylon spudger will help us pry up anything and make sure we don't static shock anything. A couple of guitar picks just in case we have a hard time getting the screen open. And I like to use one of these tile suction cups to help us get the screen off. I'm going to wait for it just to power up here real quick so we can power it back off. Something you should do before you start to work on your phone. Alright, the first step in this is to go ahead and remove the pentalobe screws at the bottom of the phone. Take both out to set them aside. The next step is to go ahead and remove the screen. I'm going to use a suction cup to do this. Since this screen is intact in one piece, you can get a good suction on it, and these iPhone 5Cs are usually pretty easy to pop the screen off of. Now if your screen is shattered or doesn't keep suction, you can use a guitar pick, just kind of stick it down by the charge port and pry up and around the phone. Just try to make sure you hit the frame portion of the device. That'll let you go ahead and remove the display as well. Go ahead and lift the screen up. Don't lift it past a 90-degree angle. We're going to go ahead and undo the two screws that hold the battery cable in place. You can use a spudger like this to go ahead and hold the screen open. So our first battery ribbon cable screw is off. Go ahead and take the second one off and remove the metal shield that covers the ribbon cable. We'll undo the top shield here. You can just go ahead and pry up the battery connector right now and just take the battery connection off the phone. That way you'll have less of a risk of doing any damage from shocking. It's pretty rare, but it can happen. We're taking out the 4 screws that hold down the LCD. We're going to remove the display just to make the repair a lot easier than having to worry about this display ribbon cable being damaged from bending back and forth as we work on the bottom of the phone. So the 4th screw is out. We can go ahead and remove the metal shield. And that'll reveal the 3 ribbon cables that we need to remove. Let's go ahead and start to pry these up. We'll start with the furthest to the right, then work our way towards the interior portion. You can leave the bottom left one intact. We only need to remove the other 3, the camera, the display, and the touchscreen. The next step is we're going to work on the cable down here. We're just going to pry off the battery connection here, as I will be using a metal tool here just a few seconds to help us remove this cable. Undoing the ribbon cable portion here and just prying it back. This has a little bit of adhesive on the back, so you'll see a little bit of resistance. Now you can use a ESD nylon tool to get this off, this little wire connector. I find it easier to use a metal tool like a tar pick or even a paper clip to help pry this up. Now we have the cable removed and the ribbon and the wire connector removed. We're going to undo this bottom right hand screw here. And it's going to take one of the grounding clips off for us in the end. What we're trying to remove now is the speaker on the phone. Screw's just being a little bit tricky. Doesn't want to come out for us. Now make sure you keep these screws in the order in which you remove them so you can put them back in. I normally draw a little bit of a map as I remove them to help me keep them in place. Now I'm going to move this ribbon cable around just a little bit. There's a little metal clip right here that sits on top of the actual portion of the cable that I'm trying to remove. So we're just going to slide this little metal ring back, and we can start to pry the cable off. It does have adhesive on the back side of it, so be gentle as you pry it up. Just going to go nice and slow as we pry forward. Now we have the cable flap moved forward. This piece right here is what we're trying to remove, this speaker portion. Before we actually get this all the way out, what we need to do is remove the additional screw to the left that's holding down right next to the home button connectors. This screw right here, go ahead and just unscrew this. And there's a little metal clip that holds down the speaker. It'll pry out. Just make sure you don't lose it. It's right where my tool was just at. We're just going to remove this home button contact cable here. And that'll let us go ahead and pry up the speaker portion. You can see there's the metal piece that I was just talking about. I'm just going to remove the home button contacts off of this. That'll go ahead and free up the speaker to be removed. Just being gentle. There's adhesive underneath it. You can see there's 2 pins that it's held down with, so you want to pry it off instead of trying to slide it off. Just taking our time. Make sure we don't damage this portion. Now, it's not imperative that you don't if you're replacing this. This little metal contact here is what you want to make sure you keep with the speaker. Since the home button contacts is part of this cable we're replacing, it's okay if it does get damaged. We'll be replacing it anyways. We're going to go ahead and remove the remaining 5 screws down here. The 4 that hold down the charge port. The first one I'm taking out here, we'll go ahead and release the ribbon cable for us that we were talking about earlier that we removed from the top speaker. Make sure you keep this. It's a grounding cable. So we're going to go ahead and just set that aside as well. It'll go back in just like so. The metal portion will go to the left and the copper portion will go to the right. 2 more screws that go to the charge port area. That leaves us 1 screw on the left hand side to the left of the headphone jack. We'll go ahead and pry the cable. It does have adhesive underneath this side of it. Now once we have that up, we can just wiggle it back and forth. And that'll go ahead and release this portion from the phone. So we're going to take a look at the 2 cables next to each other and see if there's anything that we need to transfer from one cable to the next. I'm looking at, you can already see that this little rubber grommet for the mic needs to be removed. So we're just going to pry this off. It does have some adhesive holding it. So prying up the front, just a little bit will help you pry off the back side of the microphone. Oops, there we go. We'll go ahead and remove the adhesive on this additional side of the mic. Looks like it's actually got some still stuck on there. Let me get that off there real quick. Hold on. Now when you do go to put this little rubber piece back onto the mic, there's a round side and basically a little square side. You want the round side to face towards the bottom of the phone. So the metal portion of the microphone will go towards the slimmest side of the grommet. Go ahead and just slide this back into its place. Just check to see if there's anything else on this cable that needs to be transferred. Doesn't look like there's anything else. Take our phone piece back here. The first thing we're going to do is go ahead and remove the backing to the adhesive strips here. Basically taking off all of this pink adhesive backing. There's a little piece in this cable here. Large portion here and down here as well. Now you'll see that this cable will bend towards a 3.5mm jack. Now the little rubber grommet that I was talking about for the mic is going to fit right here on top of this plastic insert. That'll make sure the microphone fits back into the phone properly and people can hear you when you speak. So you want to make sure you line that up first. It can be a little tricky to get this in if you leave the battery in. The battery actually has a little flap on it that kind of blocks the reinsertion of this, so we may have to pull that out here. It's covering up one of our screw holes, it looks like, so we'll have to try to pry it up. Looks like we'll have to pull it up and just kind of hold it as we put the piece back. And you see this flap right here is covering the screw hole, the top of the charge port area where the home button contacts go. So we'll just hold this up and put our cable back in. So we want to slide it in. You'll notice that the headphone jack and the mic kind of need to clip in first. Make sure your mic grommet fits onto its little connector as well. Just trying to wiggle that and make sure we get that in place. Perfect. Go ahead and put down the adhesive side of our cable. Once everything's lined up at the bottom, should go ahead and fit right back in for us. Just pulling that battery flap back up. Now the first screw I'm going to put back in is for the 3.5mm headphone jack. Once you get this screw in, basically the cable holds down pretty well. So I put this one in first as kind of the first holding screw. Sometimes these screws can be a little bit tricky to get back into place. They're really teeny and they like to wiggle around a lot. So just be patient and realize that you'll probably have to realign it on your screwdriver a couple of times. Alright, now that screw's in, we're going to go ahead and put in the remaining 4 charge port screws that we took out. First one on the bottom left here. Let's make sure the screw holes are aligned. So it's going to wiggle it around a little bit here. Alright, the next thing we need to do is put in our little ground connection here. This little cable can be a little bit tricky to get back into place. We'll have to fiddle with it for a little bit to find the best way to put it back in. I'll try to put the screw into the hole first and see if that works for us. Doesn't seem to be working very well. We'll see if we can't find a better way to get it back in here real quick. This is really why I don't like to edit my videos, so you can see the tricky parts of what has to go in where. I don't want to skip past anything and make it look easy. I'd say this and the little wire connection are probably the 2 most frustrating parts of repairing this portion of it. The most time consuming for you. Just trying to get the screw back into the cable connector, see if we can't get it to fit and stay in there when we go to put it back into our device. We got it in its screw hole here. I'm just going to try to put it back in as it goes down. And that did not work out for us. We're just going to have to go for old-fashioned. We're just going to line the 2 holes up and see if we can get it back in place. Oh, simple is apparently better. Worked out for us. Go ahead and put the remaining screws in for the charge port here. Alright, the next portion is to go ahead and put the speaker back in. We're just going to push down on the ribbon cable here and make sure that it bends in the correct places. You want the contacts up here at the top to be just at the very base of the phone. We're going to go ahead and reconnect the ribbon cable here as well. To reconnect this, you want to make sure it just lines up on top of the pad before you put any force onto it. It can be a little bit tricky, so don't be afraid to kind of wiggle it around just a little bit to get it on. Just don't put a lot of force onto it until you're pretty sure you have it lined up. Alright. Now we're not going to put this wire connector on just yet. It has a little guide piece on the loudspeaker portion of the phone. So here's the speaker portion. You can see the two gold contacts down there by my thumb and forefinger. Those need to hit back on. And then the actual speaker is the bottom portion. To go back in just like this. So we can't get this back in here. There's a little cable down here at the bottom that you may need to bend to fit back on top of the screw hole before you put the speaker back on. We're going to go ahead and do that just real fast as well. Just get my ESD spudger here to real quick to help us push down on the cable. We'll use this little tool here. So right here is where we're going to press down, just kind of on the inside portion of it. Make sure that this hole lines up. It'll make it a lot easier putting everything back in place if this hole lines up when we put the speaker back in. So you can see that we're just trying to line up the bottom portion here first. And if you try to start like I'm doing right now, is putting this back in the bottom and then the top, it actually won't fit. There's a little tiny clip that needs to go underneath the logic board first. Just double check my connection here. So it needs to go underneath the logic board first. So starting at the top, kind of slide it in at the top and then push it down at the bottom. I lost my little metal fastener as well that I was talking about not losing for the speaker. Have to look inside the phone here. You can see it's just right here at the bottom left hand side. And make sure you don't lose that. So I start at the top and then I push it down towards the bottom. The next portion is to get this cable to fit underneath the little metal bracket here. This part can be fairly tricky as it needs to fit underneath the metal connector. And the metal connectors basically double-sided little metal ring that fits on both sides of the speaker. So we've got it underneath and we're just sliding this ring forward to line up the two holes. We have our screw. Go ahead and try to put it in. Getting a little bit of resistance trying to fit it in, so I'm not going to force it. I'm going to try to align the two holes together just using my pentalobe screwdriver. See if that helped us out at all. There we go. Alright, the next step is to go ahead and align the left side here. We have our home contacts. They'll need to fit back down. I'm just going to remove the backing off it so it can fit in. Here's the metal piece I was talking about losing that I had to pause my video for a second to take a look for. So we're just going to go ahead and insert that on top of the speaker. The square portion goes towards the bottom. And this will hold down the top portion of the speaker here. Now with that being done, we can go ahead and put down our contact buttons for the home button. These two little silver contacts or gold contacts here. You'll see there's two little screws or kind of posts that fits back onto. So make sure you line those up and then press down on the ribbon cable. Our battery flap, we're just going to try to tuck back in behind here now. That was in our way earlier. Now this little wire connector, I hate these things. They're a little tricky to get back on. You want to be very careful with them because they can be easy to damage as well. Basically what you need to do is just align it with the little hole underneath it and just press down on it. The trick is that the cable's not bent correctly, so it's a little bit longer than the hole itself, so you have to push it backwards and then try to push it down. Now, I could fast forward this, I could edit this portion out and just say it's really easy, but really this is a fairly tricky portion to get done. So I want you to see how long it's going to take me to do it, give you kind of that same expectation as well. It's a little bit of looks like adhesive next to it. I'm going to try to pry that up just a little bit. See if we can't get a easier fit back onto the little metal ring that it fits back onto right here. Try to use our tool here to get it lined up. Give it a little bit of force to see if it'll kind of fit back on there. Try to get the cable to fit back in the little guide portion that's on top of the speaker. Maybe that'll help us line it up. Try this spudger again. Battery cable's just getting in the way, making it a little bit difficult to get it back on. Let's just go ahead and connect the battery back on here. Maybe that'll make it a little bit easier. Seems like the more frustrated I get with it, the trickier it is to put back on. Alright, there we go. That seems to be the hardest part of the entire reinstallation. We're just going to pop our battery connector back off while we reinsert the screen here. Starting with this top connector first. The same thing goes for these connectors. Just make sure you have them lined up pretty nice before you try to put any force on them. You'll kind of hear them snap in pretty easy. Just don't force them as you can bend the pins. We're just going to double check to make sure our cable's functioning correctly before we go ahead and progress to reassembling the phone. So we're just going to power it on. See if we get the charging symbol. Might help if I reconnect the battery before I do so. Take a few seconds to power on. So we got our charge cable here. Go ahead and plug it in. Perfect. You can see that we definitely recognize the charging cable. We have the lightning bolt designated as being charged, so it is functioning correctly for us. We're going to go ahead and just power the device back off. Double check my connections. Go ahead and put the metal plate back on. Remember not to bend the screen more than about a 90-degree angle when reassembling it. Go ahead and put our first screw in. This upper right hand corner is the little bit longer screw. Then we have remaining 3 screws left to put this shield back on. Two more to go. And our last one is in the upper left-hand corner. Go ahead and put our battery connection back on and put our cable shield back over it as well. One last screw for the internal portion of the reassembly. Take this screen, we're going to slide it up towards the top and then press down on the sides. I'll go ahead and snap it back into place for us. Let's work our way down. We're going to go ahead and put the bottom 2 screws in. This will require the pen to lobe screwdriver to go ahead and reinsert back into the bottom of the device. One last screw to put in. Perfect. We'll go ahead and power the device on. And that is how to replace your headphone jack, your mic, and your charge port cable. If you found the video helpful, go ahead and hit the like button. If you have any questions about the repair, go ahead and throw them down in the comments. I'm more than happy to do my best to help you out. If you want to see any future videos, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I try to release a couple a month. The next ones I have coming up are a Note 4 screen replacement and a iPhone 6 screen replacement. And I do release some other computer-related ones in the future as well. You can see that it's still functioning correctly for us. I got a lightning bolt there, and the repair is done. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.